Good Monday afternoon, everyone, and welcome into today's daily Bible reading for September the 19th. I appreciate your patience with me today as I was not able to do this reading as I normally do sometime in the morning because I woke up this morning and I couldn't talk. You would have gotten a probably real good kick out of me trying to talk and sounding like, I don't know, 12 to 13-year-old Nick with the voice cracks and the just it was not good. Katie got a laugh out. Katie laughed at me this morning. The girls laughed at me this morning. So I said, you know what? I'm just going to wait and see if the voice comes back a little better as the day progresses. And I've been trying to do a little bit of talking, read a book to Gabby, see if I could actually speak and be understood. And I think we're finally to that point as of right now. So hopefully the voice will hold out. I ask for a little bit of patience as I'll probably have to mute my microphone from time to time to clear my throat and try to get back some semblance of a decent sound from the throat. But thanks so much for your patience again, and let's go ahead and get into our text of Revelation chapter 6 for today. Oh, there was one right there. I have to make sure to not do any type of higher pitch sound than normal because that's especially whenever the cracks and stuff comes. So maybe I can sound a little more manly today and speak with my deep manly voice. Nevertheless, Revelation chapter 6 is our text for today. Let's get it on the screen. I want to share with you, excuse me, a couple of thoughts from one of the resources I'm reading through in prepping these reads and to give a little bit of something for us to think about. Remember, as we're going through this text, this is an apocalypse, meaning this is a text that is full of symbolic images and visions that would have been very familiar to the Jewish recipients at that time. It is a prophecy, meaning it is God's depiction of things that are happening on this earth, the reality of them. And then thirdly, it is a letter. It is written to a specific people at a specific time for a specific purpose to encourage them as they are suffering in the face of persecution and difficulties, as it seems as if the church is going to be overrun by evil and wickedness. Here is Jesus relaying the message to them by the hand of John that you do not need to give up, for God's got this. He is in control. And that is seen in chapters 4 and 5, where the one sitting on the throne, Yahweh, is depicted as being so glorious and magnificent and is worthy of all honor and glory and praise. Ceaseless worship is offered up to him, but not only to him, but also to the Lamb. To the Lamb, the Lion of Judah, who had great victory, but victory in a different way than we might assume victory would be had. He did not achieve victory through military might or prowess, but instead he achieved victory through sacrifice. So we have these two characters here with the spirit also mentioned from time to time, the seven spirits surrounding the throne. We have these characters of the one seated on the throne, the Lamb, the Spirit. We have them and we see them as being all powerful and almighty and being worthy of this worship. And then we get into the seals being broken here in chapter 6. We might be thinking, well, it doesn't seem as if they're really under control all that much. It seems like everything's kind of running off the tracks and doesn't seem as if they're really taking care of their people as they say they should. So that leaves us in a sort of conflict. We have these depictions in 4 and 5. Then how does chapter 6 happen? So keep that in mind, and let's try to wrestle with that. Excuse me, and think through that as we're going through these texts. Two quotations I'll read to you from Gorman's book that I thought were really good in helping us to wrestle with these ideas. One being this: he says on page 138 of his work. This is Michael J. Gorman, Reading Revelation Responsibly. That's a wonderful title, and I think very important for us in a text such as this. He says that Revelation's visions of judgment do not ultimately conflict with the central and centering vision of God and the Lamb in chapters 4 and 5. So he says there is no real conflict there. It might seem so on the surface, but it's not. Because eventually, again, they're going to have the victory in time. And then the second thing is to recognize that Revelation's visions of judgment on evil, especially the evil of imperial idolatry and oppression, should be understood as symbols rather than depictions of divine activity. So that gets to this idea of there's going to be horsemen that we're going to read about in this chapter. Excuse me. Does that mean that there are literal horsemen that are going to in the future? Because that's the way a lot of people read the Revelation. They read it purely as something happening in the future. Does that mean there's going to be a literal horseman that's going to come about? I would say no, and Gorman agrees with that. And even if you're looking at this as something that has already taken place, were there literal horsemen? Again, I would say no, that these are symbols rather than depictions. So keep that in mind as we read throughout this text. So with all that said, let's read here in Revelation chapter 6, beginning in verse number 1. Revelation chapter 6, verse number 1. Then I, being John, saw the Lamb, being Jesus, saw the Lamb open one of the seven seals. Remember, there was a scroll with seven seals on it, and they were asking, well, who can open this? It's handed to the Lamb. The Lamb is going to open this. And I heard one of the four living creatures say with a voice like thunder, "Come." I looked, and there was a white horse. Its rider held a bow. A crown was given to him, and he went out as a conqueror in order to conquer. Then he opened the second seal. I heard the second living creature say, "Come." Then another horse went out, a fiery red one, and its rider was allowed to take peace from the earth so that people would slaughter one another. And a large sword was given to him. Then he opened the third seal. I heard the third living creature say, "Come." And I looked, and there was a black horse. Its rider held a set of scales in his hand. Then I heard something like a voice among the four living creatures say, "A quart of wheat for a denarius, and 3 quarts of barley for a denarius. But do not harm the oil and the wine." When he opened the fourth seal, I heard the voice of the fourth living creature say, "Come." And I looked, and there was a pale green horse. Its rider was named Death, and Hades was following after him. They were given authority over a fourth of the earth to kill by the sword, by famine, by plague, and by the wild animals of the earth. Then he opened the fifth seal, and I saw under the altar the souls of those who had the souls of those who had been conquered because of the word of God and the testimony they had given. They cried out with a loud voice, "Lord, the one who is holy and true, how long until you judge those who live on the earth and avenge our blood?" So they were each given a white robe, and they were told to rest a little longer until the number would be completed of their fellow servants and the brothers and sisters who were going to be killed just as they had been. Then I saw him open the sixth seal. A violent earthquake occurred. The sun turned black like sackcloth made of hair. The entire moon became like blood. The stars of heaven fell to the earth as a fig tree drops its unripe figs when shaken by the high wind. The sky was split apart like a scroll being rolled up, and every mountain and island was moved from its place. Then the kings of the earth, the nobles, the generals, the rich, the powerful, and every slave and free person hid in the caves and among the rocks of the mountains. And they said to the mountains and to the rocks, "Fall on us and hide us from the face of the one seated on the throne and from the wrath of the Lamb, because the great day of their wrath has come, and who is able to stand?" And that concludes Revelation chapter 6. Whenever we think about these six seals, the first four go together pretty well because they are all mentioned with these horses. And again, I think if we're reading these with symbols and we're reading this responsibly, then what we're doing, I believe, is we're seeing these four initial seals. I think the best way to understand them and to understand them responsibly is just to recognize that these things that happen are a result of sin. That these conditions and this type of environment, when there's conquering, whenever there is slaughtering one another, when there are famine-like conditions, when there is whenever there are people being killed by the sword, killed by famine, killed by plague, killed by wild animals of the earth, that is all a result of the sin, the condition of sin that is upon the earth. That sin has so conditioned this world that all these really bad and negative things are happening. And these are things that have been true for, since the expulsion of mankind from the garden. But especially, it seems that during the days of these brothers and sisters in the early days of the church, it seems as if these things have been amplified, and that how they are just in this cauldron of difficulty and conflict. So these things have always been true, from time to time, but right now they're especially amplified. So then we get to this fifth seal where he sees the souls on the altar, and their question is, well, Lord, when are you going to take care of this? When are you going to avenge us? When are you going to judge those who are evil? And the reply is, well, a little while longer, until the number is completed. And then it seems as if at some point there's going to come the sixth seal, when again this symbolic language takes place, and those who are guilty of perpetrating these things, the kings of the earth, the nobles, generals, rich, powerful, even slaves, free people, they're all seeking to hide from judgment, to be delivered from judgment, because they recognize that the one seated on the throne, that his judgment is here, that the wrath of the Lamb is here, and the question is, who can stand? So once that time is complete, and the Lord brings that judgment, who can stand against the Lord and the judgment that is coming upon him? So that's kind of where the narrative is taking us, where we see the reality of the situation. There's the consequences of sin. Again, people conquering other people killing other people, the conditions of the earth, the famine and all that, and then just a general negative depiction of life here on this earth. That is seen. It certainly was seen during their days under the Roman Empire. If you read this as being written during the time of the Roman Empire in the 90s or such, then you would see that. And even in the early condition of Jerusalem, these things were still not good there as well. If you take an earlier type of understanding of Revelation, these things are here. And God's people are always wondering, well, Lord, when are you going to take care of this? And then the depiction is that God is going to take care of this. The question then ends with, who is able to stand? Who is able to stand whenever God's wrath and judgment comes upon the wickedness of the world? That's what we're going to think about. And that's the answer that we're going to be looking forward to seeing as we continue through this text whenever we get into Revelation chapter 7 tomorrow. So for now, as we're trying to understand this text, again, read it responsibly. I think we see this here, that these things that are taking place are just they're generally true of all time, but specifically, again, this is written to a specific people and a specific place and a specific time for a specific purpose. They see these consequences of sin just being totally ramped up within this particular time of their lives. Now, remember, I said something about the conflict, the conflict earlier. How can this God, who is seen as being completely sovereign in chapter 4 and chapter 5, the Yahweh, the Father, and then Jesus, the Lamb, and the Spirit being involved there, how can they allow this to happen? And I'll leave you this with one final quote from Gorman, which I think, again, is said very well. He says that this first tidal wave of violence, actually, this isn't him. This is a quotation from another one of the books that he is citing. But he says that the first tidal wave of violent imagery expresses the apocalyptic insight that the world's suffering is allowed by God, but is more fundamentally a result of sin. We would, of course, be misguided not to see these also as divine judgments, similar to the snowball effect of sin unleashed in the world, according to Paul in Romans chapter 1 in verses 18 through 32. So similar type of conditions in Romans chapter 1 are being experienced by Christians now. Romans chapter 1, of course, detailing the sinful condition of the world, that they have rejected God. They have worshiped the creator, or the created rather than the creator. God gives them over to these things and they enjoy them. But even in enjoying them, there are great afflictions that come by people enjoying sin. All that's mentioned in Romans chapter 1, and we see that here as well, I believe, in Revelation chapter 6. The same type of idea is there, that God allows it, but then there are going to be consequences for such, that are going to be natural consequences of sin, but then eventually there will also be consequences of sin that will come whenever it comes to judgment, active and very direct judgment from God, specifically what is mentioned there in Romans chapter 1 at the end of that chapter, where it states that Romans chapter 1 and verse number 32, that although they know God's just sentence, that those who practice such things deserve to die, they not only do them, but even applaud those who practice them. So we see that there within the text. There is a punishment that is going to come whenever men engage in this type of sinful behavior. That was true in Romans, it's true in Revelation. And even again, we take this text and apply it to ourselves by first understanding what it meant to them. And we recognize that same thing is true, that these things, though they might look different, continue to exist today because of of the sinful condition of this world, the influence of sin that is all within this world. And we even find ourselves crying out too, Lord, how long? How long? We know judgment is coming. Question is, who will be able to stand? So that is the reading of Revelation chapter 6 today, and a few thoughts that can hopefully help us to understand this text and to think upon it as we go throughout the rest of this day. Look forward to reading with everyone again tomorrow. Hopefully the voice will be good in the morning, and we'll read together from Revelation chapter 7. Looking forward to that. Take care, and God bless.